What are your voting rights when you go to the polls on election day? There are state election laws and federal election laws that apply to voters. I'm going to focus on the federal ones, but you should obviously check your state voter laws too. They are very important. I'm also going to give you a phone number at the end of this video to call if you see or are the victim of voter rights violations. First, given the political environment we're in right now, you need to know you have the right to vote without being intimidated by others. It is a federal crime to intimidate, threaten, or coerce any person for the purpose of interfering with that person's right to vote. You cannot threaten a voter with physical or financial harm if they don't vote a certain way. You cannot prevent qualified voters from voting by lying about time, dates, or places of an election. And in some states, it is illegal to wear apparel with political logos or slogans in voting locations. It's also a federal crime to intimidate or threaten a poll worker. Do not do that. Now that that's cleared up, what are your other rights? You need to make sure you're registered to vote, obviously, in order to be eligible. Every state has different options and deadlines to make that happen. If you're voting on election day, you need to make sure you're voting in the correct precinct where you're assigned, unless your state or county has a vote center where anyone who registered can vote. What should you bring to vote? Every state has different rules, but most require you to show some form of identification before you're allowed to vote. That may be an ID or some kind of documentation that you're a resident. When you show up to vote, depending on the time of day you show up to the polling place, it may be busy. If it is, you will have to wait in line. Make sure you give yourself plenty of time because sometimes those lines are very long. But generally, if you're in line and the polls close, stay in line. You do have the right to vote. Now, if you show up to a precinct and the poll worker says you're not assigned to that location, you've got two options. One, you can leave that precinct and go to the correct precinct in which you're assigned, or you can stay in that current precinct and vote using a provisional ballot. By federal law, all polling locations have to be fully accessible to older adults and voters with disabilities. And federal law says voters who have difficulty reading or writing in English may receive in-person assistance at the polls from a person of their choosing. That person could be a family member, a friend, or a poll worker, but it cannot be an employer or agent of an employer or union. And after you vote, if you want to keep track of all of the congressional, so the House and the Senate balance of power races, either in your state or at the federal level, you can pick up my handy midterm election guide. It's full of really great and helpful information. It's linked in my stand store. As promised, the phone number. If you witness or are the victim of some kind of violation of federal voting rights, you can call the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. They will be out in full force on election day. The toll-free number is 800-253-3931, or you can visit the civil rights page of DOJ's website. I will email all that stuff out to you through my Newsgirl News Roundup email on Monday, so you have it just in time to go vote on Tuesday.